empezar con el nombre.
Muskuk.
So you're going to stand in?
No, I don't know.
She's coming, sorry.
You're right. And so you need to press the mic and use it. One's for TV, one's for the webinar. Yeah. So
I have to press this
as
mic
well.
as well. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome all of you to this press briefing today. My name is Marie-Agnes Heine, and I'm the head of EMA's communication department. We are holding this press briefing today from our premises in Amsterdam. Today, the Safety Committee of the European Medicines Agency, the PRAC, concluded its review of very rare cases of unusual blood clots in people in the US who received the COVID-19 vaccine Janssen. This vaccine has been authorized in March for use in the EU, but has not yet been broadly rolled out. During this press briefing, we will inform you about the outcome of the discussions by the PRAC and the details of the committee's assessment. I'm delighted to have here with me Mrs. Emer Cook, EMA's Executive Director, Dr. Sabine Strauss, the Chair of EMA's Safety Committee, the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee PRAC, and Dr. Peter Arlett, the Head of Analytics at EMA, who can provide additional information about the data and additional studies that will be carried out. Before we start, I want to explain how we plan to run this press briefing. Please note that your microphone is disabled by default for the duration of the press briefing. We will first hear short remarks by Mrs. Cook and Dr. Strauss, and after that we will have about half an hour for questions. Once the question and answer session starts, please raise your hand in WebEx if you want to ask a question. Today's briefing is being broadcast via YouTube and Europe by satellite. The footage can be used for free by all media. You will find the respective links in the invite you received. I'm now handing over to EMA's Executive Director. Mrs. Cook, please.
Thank you very much, Marie-Agnes, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this press briefing. We're here today, as Marie-Agnes has said, because the PRAC has now concluded its review of incidences of thromboembolic events, unusual blood clots with low blood platelets following vaccination with the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. Those of you who have been following this will recall that the PRAC already anticipated this review on the 9th of April and published that it was starting the review already then. In the meantime, we have now heard of 8 cases of these very rare side effects as part of the rollout in the US, where the vaccine has been given to over 7 million vaccinees. So it was very important for us to accelerate the review, particularly because the vaccine was due to be rolled out in Europe very shortly. I must stress that we have seen no cases in the EU, but in fact rollout in the EU has been there has been very little rollout, and a lot of countries are waiting for the outcome of this review to ensure that we have the right information about the product to allow it to be rolled out safely. So on 13th of April, we were informed of the 8 cases in the US following the vaccination of about 7 million people. Now, this is a very rare effect, but it also makes it very important for doctors and patients to be aware of the signs so that they can spot any concerns and seek specialist help as soon as possible. Early intervention by a specialist can change the outcome. In our review, we worked very closely with the US FDA, and we have had no European cases. I want to also stress that the investigations are planned to continue and that we are requiring the company Janssen to perform additional studies, and we'll give you more details on those additional studies that are being requested. We're also commissioning our own independent research on thromboembolic events associated with the different vaccines. This weekend, the global death toll from COVID-19 has surpassed 3 million cases worldwide, and there are still thousands of people dying every day. And I don't need to tell you that there is untold human suffering behind all of these cases, and these vaccines play an immensely important role in combating this pandemic. When vaccines are rolled out to a large number of people, it is possible that very rare side effects can occur. and these will not necessarily have been identified in the clinical trials. But because we have a very good pharmacovigilance system in place in Europe, we can spot these events very quickly, and we can take action to make sure that healthcare professionals and patients are aware and can take necessary action. So it's really showing that the system works. And I have to say, in this case, the fact that Prague is making a recommendation before the rollout in the EU is really a sign of proactivity and accelerated review. The scientific assessment that Prague has concluded on today will allow vaccination programs in member states to take decisions on how to roll out this vaccine based on their national situation, which includes details on infection rates, hospitalization rates, ICU admissions, vaccine availability, and so on. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Sabine Strauss, who's been chairing our Prague and has led this committee to its conclusion. And of course, with Dr. Strauss and Dr. Arlett, we are available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cook, and good afternoon. After a careful review of the cases of blood clots combined with the low platelets reported after vaccination with Janssen's COVID-19 vaccine, the Prague has concluded that there is a possible link between the occurrence of these blood clots combined with the low levels of blood platelets, thrombocytopenia, and the vaccination with the COVID-19 vaccine Janssen. The product information will be updated to reflect this information and will include a warning and an update of the side effects. I will take this opportunity to provide you with some more details on the review by the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee. At this moment, we have reviewed the available data, and the evaluation of these data revealed 8 case reports of interest, which included severe cases of venous thrombosis, mostly at unusual sites, such as cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, CVST, splanchnic vein thrombosis, which is in the abdomen, as well as arterial thrombosis. And what's very important with these cases is that they all had concomitant thrombocytopenia, low platelets levels. All the reported cases occurred in the US, as you heard before, and one of these events was already reported in the clinical trials, while 7 occurred after the rollout of the vaccine in the United States. And at this moment, there have been more than 7 million people vaccinated with Janssen COVID vaccine in the United States. The reported cases occurred mostly in women under 60 years and within the first 3 weeks after the vaccination. A fatal outcome has been reported. The careful review of the cases and other available evidence have led the committee to the conclusion that these blood clotting disorders are very rare side effects of the vaccine. However, our work does not stop here. We will analyze any new data and any new evidence as it becomes available and provide updated guidance as needed. At this moment, it's not possible to identify clear risk factors for the occurrence of these very rare events, such as gender or age. The most plausible hypothesis, as we have seen with the AstraZeneca vaccine, is an immune response that leads to a condition similar to a typical heparin-induced thrombocytopenia hit. It's very important that healthcare professionals and those people coming for vaccination are aware of the possibility that these risks may occur and that they should look out for possible signs and symptoms that usually occur within the first 2 to 3 weeks following vaccination. These symptoms include shortness of breath, chest pain, swelling in the leg, persistent abdominal pain, neurological symptoms, including severe or persistent headaches or blurred vision, skin bruising beyond the site of injection. People experiencing any of these symptoms after vaccination should seek medical assistance. If treated early, healthcare professionals can help those affected in their recovery and avoid further complications. Blood clots which occur in combination with low levels of blood platelets require specialist clinical management. Healthcare professionals should consult applicable guidance and/or consult specialists, for example, hematologists, specialists in coagulation, to diagnose and treat these cases. In clinical trials that supported the conditional marketing application, the CHMP assessed that the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks and that the Janssen COVID vaccine is effective in preventing infections caused by COVID, a very serious disease. I'm pleased to leave the floor now to our moderator, Mr. Heine.
Many thanks, Dr. Strauss and Mrs. Cook. We will now take questions from the floor. But before, I want to explain you again how to raise your hand. So if you wish to ask a question, please click on the emoticon icon at the bottom of the WebEx window, and there you can click on Raise Hands. So when I give you the floor, please unmute yourself and turn on the camera. You can then ask your question. So the first question comes from Ludwig Berger from Reuters. Ludwig, please.
You mentioned there's a similarity in the conditions observed after the people received either AstraZeneca or the Janssen vaccine. Would you say that the likely mechanism of mode of action is actually the same? And secondly, you say that these people should seek specialists, medical attention from hematologists. Can you actually specify what type of treatment the hematologist should perform on these people affected? Thank you.
Many thanks. Those questions are for Sabine, I think, no? Please.
Thank you for the questions. I think the most plausible hypothesis at the moment allows us to know what happens at the end of the cascade, so when the cases occur. And then we feel that there is a very similarity with an atypical heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. The cases are very rare. We don't see very often thrombosis combined with thrombocytopenia. And if we discuss CVST, it's only in about 7% of the cases that they are accompanied by low platelet levels. So that's what we know for the moment. Indeed, we have seen that the AstraZeneca vaccine is an adenovirus-based vaccine, just as the Janssen vaccine. So there are quite some similarities between the two vaccines, but there are also differences. For example, the AstraZeneca is a chimpanzee-based adenovirus, and the Janssen is a human adenovirus. And also there are differences between the spike protein, between Janssen and between AstraZeneca. So at the moment, we see that the cases have a lot of similarities. We think that the hypothesis to explain the end of the cascade is probably similar, but it's too early to draw any further conclusions. And as for the treatment, that's indeed a very difficult issue. I think we have consulted specialists previously, and we have also been in close contact and following what's happening with the guidances. At the moment, we are not completely sure that heparin would cause a deterioration in these patients, but out of prudence, because it's comparable with the HIT, the specialists recommend to avoid heparin in these cases and to use a non-heparin anticoagulants. And all the guidelines recommend further treatment with immune globulins, and also for the CVST, there are very specific ways of treating that, for example, thrombectomy. But for the moment, that is as good as we can give any information. In the different member states, there are different guidelines available, developed by learned societies. But I think they all agree on the immune globulins, and they also all agree on avoiding until the diagnosis is made for 100% certainty on the avoidance of heparin.
Many thanks. The next question comes from Danny Kemp from AFP. Danny, please.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. If I'd be cheeky and ask a couple as well. Firstly, could you please give us the updated number of reports for all 4 of the vaccines currently authorised in the EU? And secondly, I just wanted to ask you about Sputnik. Since this uses the same technology, will you be keeping a kind of extra eye on the possibility of clots for Sputnik? And have you indeed seen any reports of blood clots linked to Sputnik? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So regarding the updated reports, I'll hand over to Dr. Peter Arlett. And the second question is going to go to Mrs. Cook. But first, Dr. Arlett, please.
Thank you very much indeed. So if we look specifically at cases of thrombosis associated with thrombocytopenia, so clots with low platelets, if we look then at the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we have 8 cases worldwide, and all 8 cases come from the United States, as was presented earlier. If we then look at AstraZeneca vaccine, we have 287 cases, of which 142 come from the European Economic Area. For Pfizer, 25 cases, and for Moderna, 5 cases. The data lock for those is the 4th of April. Thank you.
Thanks. Mrs. Cook, on the question regarding Sputnik, please.
Yes, so the question was whether we would be taking extra care with the Sputnik vaccine in view of the similarities of the adenoviruses, and also whether we had seen any actual events. So let me first of all say, yes, of course, we will be paying very close attention to this issue during the review of the Sputnik dossier, and so far we have not seen any reports in the context of the information we have been able to review so far.
Many thanks. The next question comes from Michael Birnbaum from the Washington Post. Michael, please.
Hi. Sorry, I'm just getting my video to work here. Thanks so much for this. I just wanted to ask. So the plan is to start the use of Johnson & Johnson right now. Are there any concerns about starting to use this vaccine while it's still on pause in the United States? And do you have any indication, are you able to tell from the data you've reviewed so far that these blood clotting events are less frequent with Johnson & Johnson vaccine than they are with AstraZeneca? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps we start with the second question on whether blood clots are less frequent. Dr. Strauss, please.
Thank you very much for that question. That's, of course, a very relevant one. And I think at the moment, we don't know. What we do know is that because we started with AstraZeneca, people in Europe are very aware of it, and we receive probably more reports now. So the reporting might be more aligned with the occurrence. As for the cases that have been reported in the US, we are not. It's what we discussed also with the FDA colleagues is that, of course, as we have seen, some of the cases can occur up until 3 weeks after the vaccination. So they paused it now for since April 13. So we still have to wait and see if there are more cases coming in. So it's too early to say anything about the real occurrence of the cases. What we do know is that at the moment we have around 7 million vaccinated people in the US, and we have at this moment in time 8 cases. So there is still no way of telling that it would occur less frequently or more frequently than with AstraZeneca for this moment in time.
Many thanks, Dr. Strauss. And Mrs. Cook, are you going to respond to the question on whether there are concerns now in case that now the Janssen vaccine is being used?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I think it's a very important question, and this is exactly why Prague has done the review, to make sure that we have got these very rare side effects listed, so that healthcare professionals and vaccinees can be aware in the very rare event that these may happen. So the benefits, the benefits of the vaccine continue to outweigh these risks, and we now have detailed information in the labelling that alerts to these risks. We have detailed information for the healthcare professionals in case there are any issues. So this is part of the information that is provided on as part of the rollout. So we're confident that it can be rolled out appropriately.
Many thanks. The next question comes from Naomi Kreske from Bloomberg. Naomi, please.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Can you tell us more about what additional studies you'll be requiring of Johnson & Johnson as they restart the rollout of the vaccine in Europe?
Thank you very much. Mrs. Strauss, can you respond to this question?
Yeah, we already have quite some studies in place for the Janssen vaccine, and those studies already include also research in coagulation parameters, so to better address this possible link with the thrombosis, thrombocytopenia. And we also have, like was highlighted before, commission studies from EMA that are in place, and we will be discussing the need if this is sufficient or if we need additional studies, because a lot of it is already being addressed in the different studies that are requested for this vaccine.
Many thanks. The next question comes from Helen Collis from Politico. Helen, please.
Hi there. Is it too early to say if this is a class effect? I know that was touched on earlier. And also, you said that so far you have not seen any reports of these unusual blood clots with thrombocytopenia with Sputnik. But is your review, what data is this based on? Is your review limited to clinical trial data, or have you seen any data from the Russian rollout or in Hungary or any other countries where it's being used? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first question goes to Dr. Strauss and the second one to Mrs. Cook. But please, Dr. Strauss.
Thank you very much. And indeed, it's these very rare and very specific cases of thrombosis and thrombocytopenia have occurred firstly with AstraZeneca, which is an adenovirus vector vaccine, and also now with Janssen. But like I highlighted previously, there are differences between the two vaccines. One is using chimpanzee vector, the other one a human vector, and also the spike proteins are different between the different vaccines. So it might be possible that there is a class effect, but I think it's really too early to conclude on that yet.
Many thanks. Mrs. Cook, can you look into the data that we're currently looking at for Sputnik?
Yeah, and maybe I wasn't clear when I made my remark on Sputnik. So our review of the Sputnik dossier is really at an early stage. So we haven't got to the point of looking at the pharmacovigilance reports because we're not at that stage yet. But now that we're alerted to this as a possible side effect, it means we pay extra attention to it, and we make sure that any reports that will come from the use in the field, wherever that may be, will be part of the company's obligation to report to us. But the reason we haven't seen it is because we're not at that stage of our evaluation so far. Thank you.
The next question comes from Naomi O'Leary from the Irish Times. Naomi.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my question. My question is about, I know we said that it wasn't possible to at this point conclude age and sex risk factors, but at an earlier stage there were suggestions of looking into things like contraceptive pill use, smoking, things like that. Does the hypothesis that this is an immune response help us narrow down what could be potential risk factors like that? Are we any way further down that road at this point? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Strauss, please.
Thank you very much. And yes, it's a very important question, and it would be extremely helpful if we had more information regarding this on who should we monitor and what should we look for exactly in patient or in people who will get the vaccine. We are very aware of that, and we have researched it and investigated it. As for the 8 cases that we have now for the Janssen, what we do know is that there is one case who used an oral contraceptive. That is in itself a risk factor to get CVST at a young age, but otherwise there were no specific risk factors available that we know of in these 8 cases. So we haven't progressed a whole lot on this, but further research is ongoing and will continue in order to see if we can find certain risk factors or if we can identify patients who would be at a higher risk of the occurrence of this thrombosis together with the thrombocytopenia.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Martina Davis-Gridner from the New York Times. Martina, please.
Thanks so much for your time. I'll try and be quick. Firstly, I just want to clarify something in popular language. The headline of your statement says there is a possible link, but then you're telling us that you're intending to list this as a side effect. Is it a possible side effect, or is it a side effect for just ordinary people reading our stories and reading these warnings? Another question on process is your statement today comes before that of the U.S. authorities, yet the U.S. authorities said they needed more time. Can you speak a bit about what led you to rush ahead? I know that you wanted to come out before the rollout, but it's just an interesting asymmetry to the American authorities, who are also looking at the same data as you are. So if you could illuminate us on that. And I have 3 very brief, more scientific questions, if I may. Earlier, it was mentioned that the Pfizer vaccine had 25 cases of CVST, and Moderna had 5 reported cases in varying populations. Are these also being looked at as safety signals? And if not, why not? Another question on the science. One of the 8 cases reviewed has been listed as details pending. Can you say if all 8 cases had CVST? And would you say that CVST is the defining hallmark of this side effect or possible side effect? Or is it possible that this cluster of cases will include patients who had clots elsewhere in the body but not in the brain, plus the low platelets? Thanks so much.
Okay, many thanks. Let's take these one by one. Perhaps Dr. Strauss first with the last one on the 8 cases, and then perhaps also the first one with a possible link, whether it's a possible side effect or a side effect.
Thank you very much. And indeed, many of the cases have CVST, but not all of them. Of these cases, of these 8 cases, 7 had CVST. 3 of them had also thrombosis on other sites in their body. So it's not only CVST, it's mostly thrombosis at unusual sites, like in the brain, like in the abdominal vessels, together with thrombocytopenia. So it's not only CVST here. As for the other questions, whether this is a signal, well, what we do is we look at those cases, and as we have said before, CVST and thrombosis occur also in the general population. What we have here with the CVST and the unusual thrombosis, together with the thrombocytopenia, those cases are rare, and they do not occur in a high frequency, background frequency in the general population. And what we try to do is to look at what we see in the number of cases, so the observed, and we try to relate that to the number that we expect in the population. If we look at the AstraZeneca and the Janssen, then both of them had a higher occurrence we observed than what we would expect based on the background incidence of these cases and events. While in the Pfizer and the Moderna, in view of the population that has been exposed to the vaccine, we only have such a limited number of cases available that there is not a real signal yet available, or not a real signal. It's very rare cases. I think that if you look at the exposure in the Pfizer, it's only in Europe more than 59 million. And I think I also have the data on US. They have looked at it, and there is no signal there, and the same holds true for the Moderna. There was, for example, in the cases that were identified in the US, there was no thrombocytopenia. And for now, the cases that we have seen with the other vaccines, the observed is lower than what we would expect in the population in view of the number of vaccinated people that we have available.
Thanks, Dr. Strauss. There was also this question about, whether it's a possible link or a side effect.
Thank you for reminding. Yes, and what we do is, if we feel that there is only a need for a warning because we are thinking and we need to further research an event, then it's only a warning in 4.4 in the summary of product characteristics in Europe. But if we feel that there is a possible link and therefore a possible association with the use of the vaccine, we add it to 4.8 because we feel that there is sufficient evidence to state that people should be careful because there might be indeed an adverse event that's very severe and serious, and in these cases that we have seen here is occurring very, very rarely.
Thank you very much. So we still have one question to respond to, which is, why we went ahead of FDA, and I give this question to Mrs. Cook to respond.
Well, I'm not sure whether I'm the right person to respond to this, but I think it is very important to put this in the European context where we have already had experience of looking at very similar cases with the AstraZeneca vaccine, and in fact we have been studying this for more than, I think the first cases were early March, so we were looking at it from early March until we're still looking at it, but we came up with our conclusion on the 8th of April. So we had already done a very detailed review of the risks and cases in the AstraZeneca vaccine, which gave us the experience to come to a conclusion in the context of the Janssen vaccine, and a very similar conclusion in both cases.
Many thanks. The next question comes from Norway. Oda Skietne. Oda, please.
Confirm that you can hear me, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
You cannot say exactly what mechanism causes these rare side effects, but with AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, could you walk us through some of the theories as to why this happened? What causes this immune response and where the problem might be?
Dr. Strauss, yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could. What we do have is an explanation what's happening once somebody gets this probably immune-related adverse event. We then know that platelets start clotting, that there is at the same time a clotting in certain areas that are very unusual, but we do not yet know what is the cause, the actual cause of this occurring. It would be very helpful if we would know beforehand whether it might be a kind of genetic disorder or something else in the blood vessels. But at this moment in time, I know that there is a lot of research ongoing in order to try to resolve this. and to try to elucidate the factors that may contribute to the occurrence. But like I said, what we do know is that at the end of the cascade, but that's only helpful in order to provide further treatment and to be aware of the cases and for healthcare professionals to know that this may occur and that patients need a specific treatment. But we do not know yet what exactly causes the occurrence of these rare events.
Many thanks. The next question comes from Francien Itema from NOS. Francien.
Hi, thanks for having my question. I'm wondering, how sure are you about this causal relationship? Because with AstraZeneca, you said we see a strong association. I am curious how strong the association is here with the Janssen vaccine. And the second question is, 2 weeks ago, we also talked about Janssen, Moderna, and Pfizer. And then you said for all those 3 other vaccines, we don't see that it is higher than what you would expect. And then we talked about 4 cases in, if I remember correctly, 4.5 million people. Now we have 4 more cases and 2.5 million people more who are vaccinated. What changed in the meantime? Because I'm not understanding that completely.
Thank you very much. Dr. Strauss, please.
Thank you. I think what we have here for the Janssen is fewer cases at this moment, and therefore it's we have less information. But the cases that we have seen are very similar to the cases that we identified for AstraZeneca, so the thrombosis at mostly unusual places and the thrombocytopenia. And based on the information that we have already assessed previously and the knowledge that we gained and the information that has become available around these cases, because there's a lot of research ongoing and there are several centers in Europe doing a lot of work on this in order to further progress with this, rare event. We felt that based on this quite limited number of cases, also in view of the number of exposed, the fact that it is thrombosis together with thrombocytopenia, and that doesn't occur very often, like we said, we felt that here the association is also clear. And I think because we had for AstraZeneca more cases, it was easier to come to that decision. But based on the fact that the cases that we have now reviewed have such a striking similarity, we feel confident that we also here have a strong association with the vaccination and sufficient information to update and provide information in 4.8. Because like it was also already stated, the most important thing here is it's very rare, and therefore it's very difficult for healthcare professionals to recognize these cases. If these cases are recognized on time and receive adequate treatment, a lot of the complications can be prevented. So it's important that healthcare professionals, but also people who get vaccinated, are aware of this, and therefore it's important that we provide this update in the SMPC also for the Janssen vaccine.
There was this additional question about what has changed since we had our last press briefing and the different numbers.
I think that based on the additional information that we received from our FDA colleagues, we felt that the observed versus expected changed, and that there is more information available to suggest that these very specific cases are indeed linked to the vaccine.
Thank you very much. So next we have a question from Kai Kupferschmidt. Kai, please.
Thank you very much. Also, quickly, too, if I may, you said it's too early to really know what the early part of the mechanism might be, but there is a paper out from Andreas Greinacher's group, a preprint at least, suggests it does have to do with a lot of the human proteins that are in the vaccine, so basically from the HEC293 cells in which the virus is grown. And it raised the question in my mind whether there are clear cutoffs in these vaccines about how much of these human proteins can be in there from the cell culture. Has that been checked? Is that part of what you're looking at? He also raises the EDTA. I'm curious what you think about that. And then just to be clear, because there's a lot of debate already on Twitter about this, the cases that you mentioned with Pfizer and Moderna, they were thrombosis with thrombocytopenia. Can you specify where they were? They clearly weren't in the US. Was it just Europe, these numbers?
Thank you very much. Dr. Strauss, please.
I know I follow the work from Professor Greinacher very carefully, and he had also a press conference last Friday that I think several, maybe of your colleagues attended. It's very difficult because there are theories, and I think that it's indeed important to look at all the different possibilities because we, at the moment, we are not sure yet. As you know, Professor Greinacher has also been part of the group that has evaluated the hit-like occurrence, and his group is very experienced in this research. So we follow his work very clearly, but at the moment it's too early to say anything about a certain hypothesis, but we will follow up very carefully on that. And then I forgot the second question. Oh, that
Edie, exactly. Thanks. Peter, can you please go ahead?
Yes, so thank you very much. It was going back to the numbers of cases reported. So when I spoke previously, I mentioned a data lock of 4th of April. I should correct that. It was the 13th of April. And we had 25 cases for Pfizer and 5 for Moderna. These are cases in the EudraVigilance database, and there's a legal obligation on the company for Pfizer and for Moderna to report all worldwide cases of serious reactions to us. The 25 cases are thrombosis with thrombocytopenia, and for Moderna, the 5 cases are thrombosis with thrombocytopenia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Vasiliki Angouridi from News for Health. Vasiliki.
Hello, and thank you for taking my question. So, you talked a little bit about the signs that people that get vaccinated should look out for, and also health professionals. Could you just repeat what those signs may be, and are they the similar signs you see with people that have side effects from the AstraZeneca vaccine? And also, is there any are you worried that these cases and the continued problems that arise in the vaccination programs throughout Europe would impede the immunization of the European population throughout? Thank you.
Thanks, Vasiliki. I think these are 2 questions, the first one by Dr. Strauss and the second one for Mrs. Cook.
Thank you very much. As for the symptoms to look out are shortness of breath, chest pain, swelling in the leg, persistent abdominal pain, neurological symptoms, and that includes a severe headache or persistent headache, blurred vision, and skin bruising beyond the site of the injection. Those are the most telling symptoms that we have been able to identify based on the careful review of the cases.
Many thanks. And now Mrs. Cook, regarding whether we are concerned regarding the vaccination campaigns.
Yeah, I think that what we want to do is make sure that people have the facts and the information available to them to take action in case of these severe, of these possible and very rare side effects. But I have to stress again that they are very rare, and that in the vast majority of cases, these vaccines are going to prevent death and hospitalization from COVID-19, and COVID-19 has a very high mortality rate in a number of populations as well. So we always have to balance the benefits of a vaccine with the potential risks, and this is part of the evaluation that has been done by Prague so far.
Many thanks. So before we close, we take another 2 questions. The next one is Anja Ettel from Die Welt.
Yes, hello. Thanks for taking my questions. I have just an updated one because you just gave us some updated numbers about CVSD cases after vaccination. And I'm just interested to know when exactly can we expect more information or even a detailed analysis about these new cases of CVST and SVT, especially for the vaccine of AstraZeneca. And in the signal assessment report of April, there was a debate about changing the section 4.4 of the SMPC of Vaxibria. And to be more precise, some member states proposed to include a warning, and I quote, benefit risk should be considered taking into account the availability of the alternatives and epidemiological local data. And some members even proposed to also include it in section 4.1. But I think in the end, this phrase never appeared, not in section 4.1 and not in 4.4. So could you tell us why, please? And if there is a formal assessment needed for 4.1, when will this assessment be concluded? And also a little question about AstraZeneca and the specific obligation deadline, which ends on April 30th, I think, and they should include data for the elderly from the latest US study. Did the company already provide these necessary data? And which kind of guidance will EMA give with view to the fact that the doses interval there is 4 weeks and not 8 or 12 or even 26 weeks like we've read before? Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Regarding AstraZeneca, you know that the process is still ongoing, but I'm now handing over to Dr. Strauss.
Thank you. Well, in 4.1, there is already information that the vaccine should be administered in accordance with local guidelines and local information. So that's already there in 4.1. So we felt that it wasn't useful to add anything in addition to that, because we felt that was a very clear statement. And the same holds true for 4.4, because we felt that it was already there, and that the different member states may have different considerations in how they use the different vaccines. So that's why we didn't add it to AstraZeneca, and we also didn't add it to Janssen. And the main reason there is that it's already reflected adequately and sufficiently in 4.1.
Thank you very much. Perhaps Mrs. Cook.
Maybe if I could just also add, because in fact we didn't want to focus on the AstraZeneca review during this press briefing, because the review is very much ongoing and will continue to be ongoing. But you will have seen that we did publish an update on our review of the AstraZeneca and now we have involved the Committee for Human Medicinal Products. So there's a lot of discussions ongoing at the moment, and we would expect to be able to provide some further updates by the end of the week.
And I also want to hand over to Dr. Arlett regarding probably the additional information and when we can expect it.
So thanks. Just to complement the previous two answers, Annie, you asked about cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, and it is true that most or many of the cases that we're talking about in the numbers provided relate to cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, but overall they are thrombosis with thrombocytopenia. So it's a larger set, if you like, than just the cases of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. So just a point of accuracy. You asked about when you might see more detail. Well, obviously, assessments reports generally get published, and we would hope that will happen in the coming days. And you asked about the US data. These have not yet been submitted to the European Medicines Agency, but we are anticipating in the weeks ahead that data may be submitted, and of course as soon as it comes in we'll then have an opportunity to look again at the levels of benefits in different populations. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. The last question comes from Aude Le Cribet from Medscape. Aude, please.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. So I have a question about the eight cases. Could you give the sex ratio, the number of different types of thrombosis locations for these 8? I think you just said 7 sinus thrombosis, but the 3 other locations, I don't know what they were. And also the age of each of these 8 patients, please, is my first question.
If I understood you correctly, you wanted details on the specific 8 cases with the Janssen vaccine.
Yes,
Dr.
that's
Strauss?
it. The sex ratio, the age of the patients.
Thank you.
I cannot give you all 8 ages, but they are between 18 and 49, these cases. I think the median age is 33. We had, from the 8 cases, we had 7 CVSTs, 1 case with a deep vein thrombosis and thrombocytopenia. So like it was stated already by Dr. Peter Arlett, that's the telling sign, I think, thrombosis in combination with thrombocytopenia. And the other locations were a splanchnic vein and arterial thrombosis.
Okay, many thanks. So we are now closing this press briefing. Thank you very much for your questions and for attending today. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to follow up with our press office. And also please check out our website at ema.europa.eu, because here you will find a lot of additional information on safety monitoring of COVID-19 vaccines in Europe. So thanks again also to our speakers, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.